Welcome back to the Tu-Vie podcast, your TV movie entertainment needs podcast. I am your host, James, and sitting with me is myself. There's literally no one else here on the chat. Colin got busy with scheduling stuff at work, and Cameron is currently in Florida at Hollywood Horror Nights and Disney World, actually. He's enjoying himself a little vacation, which is great. He's been working really hard, so we're glad to give him that time for vacation. We didn't pay for it, but we were cool with him leaving. But it's just me this episode, so it's going to be a little bit of a shortened down episode, but we're still going to be talking about our new director, Guy Ritchie. So let's get into it. So last week I totally messed up on not saying who the director was, but here we are. We're talking about Guy Ritchie. We're going to be talking about his filmography, keeping up with our trend with the writer's strike going on. Even though that is over with, we're going to be continuing also with the SAG-AFTRA strike that is going on at the current time right now, which is, I believe, bordering 100 days, if not over it at this point. But we're definitely going to be talking about that and the director and writing style of Guy Ritchie. Starting off with what I think is his best movie. It's actually really it's a tie. The Gentleman and The Man From U.N.C.L.E. are, I think, his best movies. The way they do the pacing, the way he wrote the story, and the way how the story unfolds, and then even the acting between everybody in that star-studded cast. But before I go any further, like we do every single time for our directors, we're going to do the top 4 known for. So I'm going to give you guys a little time to think of a top 4 known for. Okay, cool. So the top 4 known for are for Guy Ritchie are Sherlock Holmes, the very first one, not the Game of Shadows, which I believe is the second one. Lock, Stock, and the Two Smoking Barrels, which is a movie I didn't get to, unfortunately, watch during this rewatch, but it sounded really cool. And I know it's one of his, I think, not original ideas, but something from him. Snatch, which is one that we all know with Brad Pitt in that amazing accent he pulls off, and Aladdin. I don't know why either. I mean, not to say Aladdin was great because I didn't think it was that great, but I didn't think it was top 4 known for. I mean, you have many other movies you could have picked instead of Aladdin, but hey, that's what he's known for. Good for him. Guy Ritchie has 31 director credits, 20 writer credits, and 4 actor credits. So it's kind of cool. We're going to be getting all 2 of those strikes in one person right now. So, like I said, I think his best movies were Man From U.N.C.L.E. and The Gentleman. It's a really great tie between those two, as they are very different movies, but because they're so different, they're so unique. And Guy Ritchie's style of directing and writing really, I think, like go into full mode in this kind of style of movie where there's action involved, a great story, and a lot of interwoven moments of characters, especially in The Gentleman, where a lot of it is kind of told through backstory. Like the whole movie is essentially leading up to the ending, which, by the way, spoiler warning for every movie we're going to be talking about here. I know we do it every single time, so I thought I'd just get it out of the way here. So in case you didn't know, here you know. But the ending of The Gentleman, finding out it's just one long movie pitch to a studio that heartthrob Hugh Grant, by the way, in like 3 or 4 of Guy Ritchie movies, he's popping up all over the place. So I'm assuming the next movie he makes, Hugh Grant's going to be in it. But Hugh Grant's pitching the entire movie you just watched as an actual movie to a movie studio. So I thought that was kind of funny. And how the whole events played out were semi-true, but as well as the same time expanded on and written for this script. And then The Man From U.N.C.L.E., this I guess spy, I'd say it's a spy movie, for during the Cold War, during East-West Berlin and the Berlin Wall and everything, and having Henry Cavill pull off super, super cool James Bond like suave, which I've always said I think Henry Cavill would be a really good James Bond. He's already British. He looks great. He looks good in a suit. James Bond. But as well as then, the trio of Alicia Vikander and Armie Hammer, them all working together to then, it's based on I think it's a TV show. Kind of working together was really cool. They looked like they had a lot of great chemistry, and the way the story was driven for I can't remember her name. The girl that was the main bad guy, Elizabeth Debicki, who was like trying to get these warheads and everything. The whole story, action packed, well written, very funny at the same time too. And the way he can balance humor and action is, I think, something that's super cool that I don't think a lot of directors nowadays, at least, do very well. I feel like some people focus so much more on the humor, like kind of like what Marvel has been doing. They've been trying to make it so funny that they kind of don't like attach it well. And Guy Ritchie knows his timing perfectly. But going back to the first movie, The Gentleman, which is both directed and written by Guy Ritchie, as well as written by Ivan Atkinson and Marn Davis. I hope I'm saying that name right. The writers on that specific movie were super cool with leading on this one story, but then kind of like cutting it and showing it was like either a flashback or some kind of like fantasy thing and showing like what really happened and expanding on these different things. And like I said, an interwoven story of like 7 different characters that ultimately lead up to this just one big moment between Matthew McConaughey and Jeremy Strong. I think it was in the ice freezer moment. I think it was that. But it had a crazy big cast with Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Michelle Dockery, like I said, Jeremy Strong, Leanne Renee, I hope I'm saying that. Colin Farrell, Henry Golding, and of course, as always, Hugh Grant. And of course, many other characters and many great actors. But the whole story of Matthew McConaughey's like, rise to power in a way where he's kind of, I think from I didn't get a chance to rewatch that, but I know I did see it enough times. I think he was like not a kingpin in a way, but he was definitely like involved in a lot of this like crime stuff. And I don't know. I love that the line where it's like, there's only one rule in this jungle. When a lion hungry, he eats. And I never thought Matthew McConaughey could pull off that kind of cool, but he pulls it off great. And then pulling back from the Man from U.N.C.L.E. The whole story of I don't know if it was an episode of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. or something like that, but I know they took this whole thing, Guy Ritchie as well as the other writers, Lionel Wingram, I think I'm saying that right. I'm really bad with names, and Jeff Kleeman. They wrote this really cool story of spy versus spy, and ultimately trying to get to this one same goal, and at the same time not kill each other, but then they're contrast to. So it's like I think I'm repeating myself when I'm saying this. It's a really cool spy movie, and they just know how to direct the comedy and action perfectly. And the scenes like for Man from U.N.C.L.E. where he's doing the car chase, and they have that zoom out to both cars and then zoom back in, and how he makes the camera feel like a character, and the way that Guy Ritchie makes the camera act as a middleman between conversations. So it's a lot of show not tell, which is I really think something a lot of directors and just people in general don't normally do. But like I said, like the camera being as this middleman is super important, that it requires less work on the audience, which is great. I think a lot of people could take notes with. Like in the scene where he's meeting Alicia Vikander's character and he's holding up a photo and saying, your father was seen with yada, yada, yada X time ago. And she's playing coy and she was like, well, which one's my dad? And the camera kind of zooms in on the guy that is her dad. And he's like, oh, funny. All these different things where you really didn't know who the guy was. You never saw the dad's face, but then the camera's acting as this middleman to help you figure out who's the dad. And then that same act is kind of seen then throughout when she's meeting her dad, and all these different moments where there's something happens and everything goes a little quiet, or like a focus is drawn on differently, but then it goes back to what actually happened and you get to expand on the story more. So I think Guy Ritchie really does a lot of good things where he sets something, makes you think of something, and then goes back to when it actually happened to help you understand it. Like I think his whole time, like his play with time, is kind of cool. Quick thing: the 4 acting credits he has is the Gentleman, which he plays the Miramax studio executive that Guy Ritchie is pitching the whole movie to. And King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, he played the inn owner. In Rock and Rolla, which is a movie he also did, played a guy on bike, very famous role of his. And in Snatch, he was a man reading a newspaper, second famous role of his. For both writing and directing, he did The Covenant, which came out, I think, last year with Jake Gyllenhaal, Operation Fortune, The Gentleman, which, like I said, great movie, Aladdin, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Star, which is a short film, Swept Away, and Revolver. So that's kind of cool to see that most of his credits were writing and directing, even though he's got a lot of great stuff on his writing credits. And also another fun fact that he worked with David Fincher on The Hire as writers. So if you guys want to check out our David Fincher episode, which is out now, you guys can check it out. But it's kind of cool to see that those two were working together, two absolutely incredible writing and writers and directors. From what I remember hearing something about The Gentleman TV series. I do not know where that's going at, but I remember hearing something about that. And if that's the case, I pray to God it exists, because it'd be kind of cool to see expanding on that story, because I think there was a lot left out that I'd like to kind of see, especially with all Matthew McConaughey's character and even Charlie Hunnam's character, that I think would be really cool to see as a TV series. Not forever long seasons, like maybe 3 seasons at most. But still, I think it'd be really cool to see. And before we change topics, I really do think Guy Ritchie, and I said it earlier, could do a really good 007 movie. I think even with Henry Cavill, I know he's a little older, but I think that'd be really cool to see him play James Bond and make this new kind of James Bond that is very action packed and very swift and very very to the point, but at the same time it's still a James Bond movie where you get this, this really cool spy story, but he can make it, I think, so original and so unique. I think he could kill it in the 007 universe. Not universe, but you know what I'm saying. Switching gears to the SAG-AFTRA update. So you guys want the good news or the bad news? Bad news it is. Okay. So SAG-AFTRA last week met on Monday and then they met on Wednesday. So not the Wednesday that this episode is coming out. It is the last Wednesday. So that was promising. We stated in the last episode that they were meeting all through that week. They were going to work on the weekend on the deals and everything, and then meet again on Wednesday to work on the terms. So the talks between SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP on Wednesday were in the works, and then it came to a screeching halt right after that meeting. And they have had no sign, no word of meeting up again with the AMPTP after that meeting. And it's not SAG-AFTRA's fault in any way, shape, or form. It is the AMPTP's fault because of 2 reasons. First one, the deal that they gave the SAG-AFTRA team was less than the one that they were first given well before the strikes began. So back in January, when they were meeting to potentially not have the whole strike happen, that deal that they just gave today or last week was less than that one. So almost 100 days later, they're giving them less. So then SAG-AFTRA gave them their deal, looked at it, walked out. Didn't say anything. They said, we're done. They just walked out. Now, I'm paraphrasing, of course, on this, but the AMPTP has shown resistance to try and talk about anything about this, which is not good. So a new thing that the SAG-AFTRA team was working on was that actors were asking for 2% of streaming revenue, something that the studios did not think was reasonable, which is wild. It's 2%. Not that much. And they also have said that they won't counter offer with SAG-AFTRA's last offer, which is what I said earlier. So they thought the 2%, which is very small, and they were like, we're done. We're not talking about this, which is, I can't repeat myself on this, but that is insanely stupid for the AMPTP to just say, we're not talking about this again, even though it is 2%. It's 2%. It's 2%. It's not that much money. Now, SAG-AFTRA and the actors deserve a lot more than what they have been given. Of course, the treatments and even the pay and everything just is not that great. And AMPTP is just being selfish in this. They're not really like focusing on what the bigger issue is, which is something that Disney has already done. There was a certain clip going around the internet right now, which I'm sure you guys can look up, of something that they put on Disney Plus, which was like, I think a movie, like a Disney Channel movie or something. I don't really know what it is, but in one of the clips, there's like a basketball stand, like a gym stand of like 2 rows full of AI people that are based around people that they scanned, and that there was a story, I believe, that went out saying that they had the likeliness scanned, but they didn't really know what was going on. They didn't have time to ask questions or anything, or even get permission. They just kind of did it. So this is kind of already happening, which then brought on to this new deal called the No Fakes Act. It is being proposed to protect actors, singers, and others from having their voice and likeliness become AI generated. If passed, it would hold people, companies, and platforms liable if they produce or host digital replicas without consent. So pretty much it's this like, hey, don't do it. Don't do AI. There's no point in making the people without them knowing. Don't do it. And I believe that the 2% of the revenue, the streaming revenue, would be taken out of the CEOs' paychecks or the Hollywood executives' paychecks. I'm not exactly confident in that, but I know it would be taken out from something. So a lot of that streaming revenue would be then going to the actors and writers, which is great, or actually just the actors, which is still great. But the thing is that the 5 highest executives go from, I'm not going to say names, going to go from 498 million, I believe, to lowest 192 million. 2% of all that just to go to them would be perfect enough. That's a lot of money that they're still wanting to hold on to. Now, again, I could be completely wrong on all this, but I just know that still 2% is a lot to the actors because that's going to be benefiting them, and that's not going to be breaking the executives. Like they're not making deals to make the executives' lives hell. They're just trying to make their jobs and everything easier, and the executives can do that, but they're not. Again, I don't know the whole story. I'm only reading with what AMPTP, not the AMPTP, SAG-AFTRA has put out, and I really hope it's not as sinister, not probably the right word there, but it's just not as bad as it always is. But it's not looking that way, and I think that the AMPTP needs to just wake up, realize what they're doing is not helpful, and figure out a way to actually help the people that create these things that made me make this platform, and that gives them money. That really is what people go to see. So hopefully any day now. And for the good news, WGA members have ratified the new deal to a 99% vote in favor. So that 1% maybe wasn't exactly in favor with everything, but majority of them were in favor of the new deal. So it is officially 100% done and over with. I know it's been done and over with for about almost 3 weeks now, which is great. But now everybody's got the deal that they needed and they've all signed it in favor. So congrats on WGA. In other news, the A24 and Miramax bidding war for the Mike Myers IP has gone to Miramax. There's been also rumors saying that it also went to A24 and the other way around, but I believe I've seen more about Miramax. So they have they've gotten the IP now, and they've said they're going to be working on these other different projects, which we'll see. You know, it's not like we've gotten enough Mike Myers that we can hold off for a little bit, but good on them. And speaking of A24, they've also said they've been looking to get more big IP projects and some action projects too. And if you're not familiar with A24, I believe they're like, I don't want to say indie company, but they're not a big, huge, like multi-million company, but they do make very great movies that go on to make millions of dollars. And the budgets for them may not be that expensive, like crazy big, like the recent Marvel movies, but movies like The Whale, Causeway, Pearl, X, Bodies, Bodies, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Men, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and tons more that go on to be huge hits and win Oscars. But they need to be making more projects that produce a lot more money, because one of the movies that they released some time ago with Joaquin Phoenix didn't really make all the money that they needed. They lost a lot of it. So I'm glad that they're looking to expand to other IPs. It doesn't necessarily mean what they have been doing they're going to throw away just to get more money. But I think that using these IPs that can generate more people to come see movies is going to be beneficial. But I'm 100% certain they're going to be making the movies the exact same way they did before, in just the right style. In other news as well, we are currently in the events of Avengers Endgame. I know this is kind of unimportant, but I think it's kind of cool to see the movie we saw in 2019 kind of match up in time now. So the day I'm recording this is October 16th. That is sadly the day we lose Black Widow and Iron Man all in this one day. And I think about a week ago, maybe even shorter than that, it was when Cap and Iron Man and Natasha all met together at the cabin. So it's kind of cool to kind of see how that plays out now. I just think for me, that's kind of cool. And speaking of Marvel, they have gutted the way they have done the TV shows to do a whole different style. So I think this is good news. I know they did recently let go a lot of very talented people from a certain show that they were working on, that they're completely restarting to make it better. And everyone has kind of come out and said that's great, because of what they have put out for what that show would have been wild. Like the character we all know wouldn't have dawned on the costume we know him as until like the fourth episode. Two big characters we hope to see in the show itself would have been dead in the very first episode as to, you know, why he's no longer wearing the costume. I'm not going to say the name because I know it's still kind of out there and we're trying to not to do our best to promote anything that's being made right there. But you can figure it out. And it's good. It's a good idea that they're taking a step back and realizing, hey, giving $150+ million on a season on the fly isn't that great. Hey, maybe bringing in people who know how to make a TV show and properly make it instead of just one long-ish movie isn't, isn't working. We need to bring these guys in. And having the fix and post attitude is not helping. So good restart. And like just briefly said, they are bringing in showrunners. They are bringing in people who know how to make a TV show that could go, 1 or 2 seasons, like a current show is doing now. Instead of just doing like a limited time event, it is now getting a vision of what they can do, which has also been a big problem. And also that they're giving writers creative oversight, which is great because now the writers are getting to do the thing they love to do and are trained and know how to do properly. So the show that was completely, gutted and that was kind of working on, they gutted it. They kept a very little bit of what it was originally shot and done. They're gutting it to make it an extension of what the previous version was on Netflix, which is good. Not to say what they were doing was going to be terrible, but it's good that they're putting it back to what made it so great. I think this is a really good change for Marvel. I know Marvel has had some rocky stuff right now, but I'm holding out faith. I'm Mr. Optimistic, and I cannot believe that the studio that did it so perfectly is choosing to ignore what they have done before, because I know they want to catch up to what was lost during COVID. They want to, and the stories they've put out are not terrible. Like on paper, these stories are incredible. And there's been some great hits, but there hasn't always been the perfect ones that made, the most, I guess, complexity and sense in the Marvel universe. Like one that Colin always gives me shit for is Thor: Love and Thunder. I personally, I think Thor: Love and Thunder is fun. Is it great? No. Is it perfect? No. Was Christian Bale wasted? Absolutely. But I still find it very fun. Black Panther was absolutely insane. It was so good because I think they even said they put all the time and resources into that movie. And I think all the other ones were kind of rushed. Now, as much as I don't want to have these stories rushed and these movies rushed, because we've seen how that looks when they're rushed, I do want them to focus on going back to what made these movies so great, in that it's giving them enough time to work on the CGI, work on the story, and tell the right story. Whether it be a niche group or a niche story or whatever, they can still make it absolutely insane. Like Guardians. Barely anyone knew about the Guardians of the Galaxy. There was a big fan base, but not enough, like Iron Man or Captain America. And it was absolutely insane. And if you look back in the very first Iron Man movie, the suit looks insane. But I think the problem is that they've kind of like wanted to play catch up, and they haven't been focusing on what made those stories, got myself, so good. So hopefully Marvel does this change for the better. I think they will be. I'm holding out hope. And on a final note, bit of a sad one, Michael Caine has officially retired. So I know we said this about, I want to say 3-4 episodes ago. Michael Caine is retiring. He was thinking about it. He's 90 years old, had a great filmography, lived a long life. The guy absolutely deserves to be retired. But we are going to miss him. He's a absolute staple to the acting community. Was crazy good in Inception, all the other movies he's done. I know everyone probably knows him as Alfred from the Dark Knight series, but go look at his other filmography. They're pretty incredible. Let me guys know what your guys' favorite Michael Caine movie is in the comments. I'm very curious to see that. But that will have to be rolling credits on episode 24 of the Tu-Vie podcast. Thank you guys again for watching. Next episode, we're going to be covering Martin Scorsese's filmography. Everybody should be back here for that one. Fingers crossed on timing. But we're going to be covering Martin Scorsese. Got it on the first try. So if you guys want to go back and rewatch his movie so you guys can keep up with our conversation, that'd be great. If not, no worries. You guys can learn about more of him in the next episode. Of course, I'm your host, James. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next time.